Welcome. The Columbian is pleased to welcome candidates for Vancouver City Council Position 6. And as you all know, this is the position held by Bill Turley, who is not running for re-election, so it is an open seat. And just so you know, there is a 7th candidate in this race, Dorel Singeorzan, and I apologize, I'm sure I butchered that. He emailed me just a little while ago. He had an emergency today, will not be able to join us. So, but I'm glad that all of you could join us. As most of you know, we are videotaping this. We will post it unedited on the website for the benefit of our readers. Because we have such a large group of candidates, and thank you all for running, but we'll try to keep this moving, so I apologize in advance if I cut you off or if we're a little short, and try to keep things moving. So anyway, with that, we will start with introductions. Take 1 to 2 minutes, introduce yourselves, and if you could maybe mention what would be your biggest policy priority if you are elected to the council. And we'll start at this end with Mike.
All right. Well, my name is Mike Pond, and I love Vancouver. I am born and raised here, 5th generation Washingtonian with deep ties, commitment to the community. I am a East Sider, a renter in the Landover-Schummel neighborhood. I am currently a marketing specialist with a union print shop called ADCO Printing and Graphics. Let's see, I am an Eagle Scout. I'm a proud Penguin. I received my associates at Clark and finished my undergrad at Western Washington University, where I studied communication and sociology. While I was there, I was bit by the political bug and was elected to serve as the Vice President for Student Life, managing a $1.2 million budget. That kind of parlayed into my local political activism, and since returning home have worked to transform leadership across the city, county, port, state, and federal levels. Those experiences have really taught me exactly what it means to be a representative leader, what community events to be at, what community meetings to be at. I've been at over 100 city council, county council, not to mention regional transportation council, C-Trend board meetings, neighborhood alliance. Let's see, any NAACP, any community meeting that's open to the public, I've been there to really hear what's going on in the community and build relationships with those leaders across the community to be able to amplify their voices. That's kind of informed what my three platform issues are. Most important to me is housing affordability, transportation, and workforce development. I think that's a purview that the City Council has a lot to do with. As a young person, I think those decisions being made now are going to be affecting us for the next 30 and 50 years. I'm still going to be here, so I've got a lot at stake at that discussion, and I think that my leadership can help with that. You can learn more about myself and my issues at my website, votepond.com. I do want to thank the Columbian for bringing us all together today. I think this is the first time we've all been in one room together, and I look forward to this important discussion and look forward to earning your support, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeanne?
I'm Jeanne Stewart. I have been in Vancouver, I'll say 40 years or more. Live on the Upper West Side. I have served previously on the Vancouver City Council and the Clark County Council. I have experience on those in all matters over a long period of time, and understand how both of those organizations work, how perhaps they could work more closely together. I served on a host of boards and commissions, including Regional Transportation Council, C-Tran, where I believe I served 6 or 7 years, the Bi-State Commission between Washington side and Oregon side. I have served on a number of other interstate transportation commissions. I think being elected and going into office and doing a good job is service. It's service to your community, and it's no different than any other kind of service I've done in the community, which includes in neighborhoods, helping individuals in Carter Park neighborhood for years. So this is service to our community and service to our country. That's profoundly important to me. I've chosen to run again because I see a lot of good work that's been done by the city. Interesting downtown redevelopment, which has been ongoing for 10 years and very successfully. What I see now is the need for looking at Vancouver in a more holistic basis, all the way to the east side and to the north. And it will become profoundly important to make decisions that protect our neighborhoods and keeping the affordability on those neighborhoods. We spend millions of dollars, City of Vancouver and Clark County, on housing subsidies to keep people in very low-income apartments and so on and so forth, to get people who are on the margins in housing. We need to be very careful we don't make decisions which upset the balance of current existing affordable functional neighborhoods. And that is one of my primary concerns. My other concern is this vast taxation package that the city is preparing.
And we'll get to that
and
specifically.
Unintended consequences from that.
Great, thank you, Diana.
Hello, Diana Perez. I am from, I've been living in Vancouver for the last 2 decades. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and moved to the Pacific Northwest as a student biologist trainee and wildland firefighter, and have moved on to earn my education in fisheries, and then moved up to Vancouver and live on the far east in an area that's been annexed by the city, and have started my family there. And so I have 2 wonderful children in the Evergreen School District. And I wanted to get involved with my city local government, find out what was going on, where am I living, who do I work with and live with. And so I co-chaired and led my neighborhood action plan on the East Old Evergreen Highway neighborhood, now Columbia River. I'm still waiting for that sidewalk in front of my house, but the speed has been reduced and the train horn noise has been taken away from that area. So that was a wonderful experience for me to get involved locally. And it just cascaded from there. So I started the Southwest Washington League of United Latin American Citizens, Council 47013, and since then have been working with the community to address some social issues, economic issues, political influence, and through that I've been able to make some major contributions to the local community. I've been I'm a recognized community leader at the local, state, and national level. I'm also a commissioner appointed by the governor on Washington State Parks and Recreation Commission. I've been able to bring in, through an Upward Bound grant from the U.S. Department of Education, the first National Education Service Center site, Upward Bound, and has brought some jobs here servicing our local students. Again, focusing on some of our local issues that aren't mainstream. I'm also on the board for Clark County Volunteer Lawyers Program, and that is a wonderful resource for our community, and have been advocating for that to help our community. And then most recently being involved in the Stronger Vancouver initiative. So as far as what's my policy priority, it is a Stronger Vancouver effort to make sure that as Jeanne mentioned, that we do it smartly, we do it effectively, and the least impactful, given that half the city are renters, and we have a population that currently the city public services cannot meet as far as safety in our fire, police, and economic vitality. So to me, that's the number one policy, to make sure that we have an infrastructure that's going to meet the needs for a growing population. I'm sure we'll go into that a little bit later. Yeah, so I bring my collective background, education, and community work to the City Council, and I am an advocate of our population. When I say our population, that means seniors, aging in place, people with disabilities, people on a fixed income, and people who have a hard time affording their homes. So these issues cross the spectrum in every type of ethnicity and community and neighborhood. And so with my additional background is my natural resource in public land management. So I will advocate for a healthy environment for all, looking at our climate change and addressing improvements for our healthy living environment for everyone.
Great, thank you. Sarah?
Well, I'm Sarah Fox, and I was also born and raised in this community, kind of a theme of how long we've all lived here. And I went to Hudson's Bay High School, and after that I went into the military. I served in the U.S. Army for 6 years. The last year of my service, I was in a war zone in Bosnia. Came back home, finished college at Portland State University with a master's in urban and regional planning. I would have gone right into the field of urban planning had it not been for my family's business at the time. The recession was hitting metal companies pretty hard right about that time. Ended up helping their company get back on its feet. And then 14 years ago, I got a job working for the city of Camas and got to return to urban planning, which I've been doing ever since. I also have been still serving our veteran community. I'm a junior vice commander of the VFW post right off Andreessen there. That also means that I'm also on the honor guard, and I serve our community by giving the last measure of respect to our comrades when they do pass, and also at community events. I think it's really important to have that connection with our military and our civilian community in this city. I'm also an advocate of volunteering whenever I can. I've been also serving on the Historic Preservation Commission, which works to really maintain our historic resources in this community. We do public outreach. We received an award last year for our outreach efforts. We were basically going to every city in the county and talking to them about the program, about the benefits of preserving historic resources. We created an app so that anyone can take a tour of our resources in the cities of Vancouver and our surrounding area. So it really pushed it up from the level that when I joined 6 years ago, where everything was pretty much printed in a pamphlet that you'd have to find at some museum somewhere. And so that theme is also carried across the work that I've done for the city of Camas, where outreach is very important. I believe in decisions can't be made in a vacuum. You need to talk to the community. If you're making a decision that affects a particular area in the community, you better have buy-in from those residents, and those residents need to be at the table helping make those decisions as well. And so just that's part of basically my life's work. What else? Oh, and then top priorities for the city would be, it's hard to pick one because they all overlap one another, which again we've been hearing from everyone else in the panel as well. Affordable housing is definitely a top concern of mine. I've been working on affordable housing throughout my career as well, taking a look at who's impacted, how we can solve this problem, which is really a national problem. But the city's program and having $6 million a year to spread amongst the new construction, rehabilitation, and programs that can keep people in their homes or in their apartments, keep them housed is very important. To continue to fine-tune and support and report back to the community on our progress. Attending one of the most recent homeless task force meetings, they had, and I just realized I said that all wrong, but the homelessness community meeting they had last Thursday, they were talking about showing an uptick in homelessness in our community, but also with that in mind, they wanted to champion the progress that they've made to get people into shelter. And so keeping that message alive in the community, letting them know that even though it might look like it's worse for now, we're still making progress is really important, because stable housing is one of the foundations for our city, for youth achievement, for seniors. It touches every aspect of our community, and so we need to keep that at the forefront of our decision making. And then our infrastructure, ensuring that we have clean water and sewers that work and roads without potholes and safe sidewalks would be, I guess, my other top priority moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so my name is Adam Aguilera. I've been a longtime resident of Vancouver. I went to college, starting at Clark College, and then transferred to Washington State University, Vancouver, where I earned a bachelor's in English and a master's in education. I'm also a national board certified teacher. I began my career in the Evergreen School District, where I've taught for 11 years. So my whole career has been centered around public service, and that really is what has inspired me to run for public office, because after teaching thousands of students in our community, I see the need that despite the new growth and new prosperity that we also have a lot of poverty and families that are struggling. And so I want to make a positive impact on everyone's lives here in our city. I'm also a small business owner of a retail wholesale plant nursery business. And I was one of our city's finalists for Vancouver City Council back during the appointment process in January. I'm also appointed by the governor to serve on the Professional Educator Standards Board, which is a state agency that has a direct impact on all of our higher education programs and what kind of opportunities that it provides for our students. And so I've been doing a lot of work around diversifying the educator workforce so that our teachers and educators are reflective of our students in the community. And I've been very appreciative of the Columbians' coverage of such an important topic in that regard. So in terms of my issues of what I'm focusing on for the campaign is around opportunity, really looking at how can we expand pipelines for all of our families in Vancouver into the trade apprenticeships, which have a huge demand for jobs that are good paying and don't require families to get into a lot of college debt. And I'd really also like to explore entrepreneurship in our community, educating our families to see the opportunities that they can have in starting their own small businesses here in Vancouver. And when it comes to affordability, I've been knocking on a lot of doors where we've been talking about removing barriers and costs around accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, to help keep our seniors aging in place in the homes that they've owned for decades. And also looking at other areas of a family's budget. We've focused a lot on housing, but when you look at food, childcare, and transportation, what are some community-based partnerships that we can create within the city of Vancouver to help those families who are in need as a great prevention tool to reverse the trend of homelessness that we've been seeing in our community. And sustainability is another area that our campaign is focusing on, and that is around the idea of looking at our city preserving and growing our own local resources. The idea that rather than having grass landscaping that nobody likes to mow anyway, that we look at ideas like edible landscaping, which is really taking off in communities around us, where families are growing their own food, and landscaping companies are coming in and providing that service and providing a really profitable business model that is really moving the cities forward in a positive way.
Great, thank you. Paul.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Paul Montague. I am a 25-year resident of Vancouver, moved here in 1993 after completing my master's in communications management in Southern California. I worked in the telephone industry for about 20 years. And after the telecom industry melted down in 2002, I was faced with figuring out what I was going to do with my life. Long story short, I ended up at the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce in 2005. And for the past 14 years, I have really been focused on economic development in Southwest Washington. My work at the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce for about the last 8 years has been focused on growing the small business community and working with small business owners to help them grow their businesses. And then for 3 years, when I was executive director at Identity Clark County, my focus was on larger economic issues, in particular trying to get the Columbia River crossing in place in 2011, 12, and 13. After that unsuccessful effort, I then took on some new roles in the community and ended up in Battleground, focused on community and economic development as the Battleground Chamber of Commerce Executive Director. To get back on the personal side a little bit, I have a daughter who is a graduate of Columbia River High School and 2 stepsons who are at Vancouver School of Arts and Academics, and actually one graduated this year and the other one will finish in about another 3 years. I'm a firm believer in education. I believe that we need to move beyond the College for All model to start looking at workforce development as one model for how do we prepare our youth for future careers in industry, whatever that may be. And really as a broader focus, I'm really focused on economic development. If you look at, for example, the Interstate 5 bridge, a stat that we've all heard many times, over 60,000 people a day travel across the Interstate 5 bridge to go to work in Portland and come home each evening. Over 140,000 vehicles travel across that bridge every day. My focus on City Council is about continuing our partnerships with other organizations like the Columbia River Economic Development Council, the Chamber, and other groups to continue to try and recruit companies here who are going to bring with them family wage jobs that are going to provide better support and reduce the need for crossing the Columbia River to get employment in Portland. A second arm that I believe we need to look at is, in addition to the Columbia River crossing, I believe transportation is very important. There's a saying that I've always heard in business is that transportation or roads are the lifeblood of business. But frankly, when you get down to it, roads are the lifeblood of any community. If you look at our arterials, they are crowded. If you look at our community and neighborhood streets, they are still, in many cases, country streets without sidewalks. I think about Minnehaha. We've got a great park, neighborhood park in Minnehaha that parents almost have to just drive their kids to the park and drop them off because there are no sidewalks, and really all you've got are ditches on each side of the street. Beyond workforce development and economic development, I believe we still need to preserve the quality of life here in Southwest Washington. When I look at one of the things that's really gratifying to see is the city's moving forward with the adoption of a Culture, Arts, and Heritage Commission here in the city of Vancouver. If you look at Pearson Airfield, for example, Pearson is one of the oldest continuously operating airports in North America. It has received numerous awards or recognition from around the country for that, and it's an economic engine, bringing in something like 39,000 visitors, generating nearly $27 million in revenue for the city, and being self-sustaining. The fort is part of our heritage. The Vancouver Trout Hatchery, other places around Vancouver are places that we really need to preserve and not forget as we continue to move our community forward.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks again to all of you. Let's start with a question that we'll eventually get to each of you. One of the big issues, and a couple of you mentioned it, is the proposal from the Stronger Vancouver. Jeannie, I'll start with you because you were the first to mention it, I believe. What are your thoughts about that proposal?
So, having been on the council for a number of years, I'm very familiar with Vancouver City Council budget. Stronger Vancouver is a kind of a two-part package. The part that is the best defined right now is the areas of vast increases in taxation. So that increase in taxation, some of the major issues are a head tax on every employee. There already is a head tax that exists that will be increased. That affects small employers and small businesses first, but it'll affect Vancouver Clinic, it'll affect all of us. A second part of that is a B&O tax, a city B&O tax. So many people don't even know what a B&O tax is. It is a tax on gross receipts before any expenses or deductions. It is a very regressive tax. The state of Washington has a business tax. My husband and I had a small business for 30 years, and B&O was an aggravation because it's off gross receipts, your total income for the business. Increasing the Vancouver license plate fee through their transportation benefit district started out at $20 2 years ago, went to $40 this year, and they're talking about adding another $10 to every license plate fee. So the other part of this, and the part that will affect everybody, is right now there is a levy lid of 1% per year, which is the state maximum that a jurisdiction like Vancouver can increase property tax on assessed valuation. And we're talking residential business, we're talking all property. The plan of Stronger Vancouver is to permanently remove that levy lid lift of 1% for at least a 10-year period, maybe ongoing. So we're getting into territory here that has a profound effect. So when I think about that, I think these are new budget dollars coming in. So what the city has not made apparent, and I'm very curious about, is their current base revenue every year from existing taxation, and then a detailed plan of what they think this new money needs to pay for, detailed, committed. That does not exist. So one of my big concerns is when I go to the work sessions, and I've been to several, it's what I refer to as happy chat. It's, wouldn't it be nice if we redid every park? Wouldn't it be nice if there was a bunch of new equipment?
Now, would those things be nice?
Of course they would be nice, but to have a blanket raising of tax where you're specifying what revenue you're going to generate, I think there needs to be a specific schedule. Don't talk about the tax in specifics and what you might do with it in generalities. So just to be clear, the kinds of things that concern me are this. I've seen 3 or 4 versions of Stronger Vancouver, even when it was under a different name. In some of those, they showed the plan was to spend money on new fire stations and to enhance law enforcement. And at one time I saw, it was some very large number of adding new police officers. That that has fallen off from the initial report.
So at this point, you want to see specific details.
Well, yes.
And
I would
exactly what it will do.
And I would like to see what kind of revenue they think it will raise. But here's the other point.
Well, and hang
Small
on.
business is,
I'm sorry, we're going to move along. Diana, what are your thoughts on it?
I have a lot of thoughts. Having served on the Stronger Vancouver, you know, for the last 22 months, I went through this major crash course on the city budget and the needs. And so bottom line is we have 185,000 people living here and 3,000 being added each year. After the recession, there was a cut in staff across the board and budget was very limited. We're still at that level in providing the services locally. So what that means is we are not meeting the needs and the demands of the population currently in place and growing.
it's true.
Okay, so there is a very shallow toolbox that the city has to meet those demands. Those demands are a fully operational center where when we have a storm or when we have a very severe weather, who's going to go out and get our electricity back up? Who's going to go out and clear the roads for emergency services? Number two, we need staff and fire and police to be able to prioritize our safety. Right now, we don't have that level of staffing. We have to borrow ambulances from local cities, from CAMAS, to cover certain areas of the city. That's unacceptable. The third thing is, it is also unacceptable for the residents to be paying the majority of property taxes. So we have a very disproportionate, unbalanced payment of property taxes between the residents and commercial. The other thing, when we talked, Jeanne brought up the business and occupancy tax, that we deliberated on that quite a bit because we don't want to impact the residents, the tenants, the renters, and the small business owners who are trying to grow and thrive. So it's not like we chatted and it's a nice thing to do. I mean, seriously, we looked into the numbers and mechanisms and tools to be the least impactful towards small businesses. That's why with the B&O tax, whether good or bad, when it was taken away from the city, it was because they thought the Vancouver City Mall was going to make up for it. That's my understanding. Well, that did not happen because little did they know that people were going to be shopping more on the internet or going to Portland. So now looking at the B&O tax, that's for businesses who are doing very well, over $100,000 of gross receipts revenue. That's a small feat of itself.
Would these fees, would they pay for needs, or are there just some wants in there, some things that?
No, there was, the staff went through a very comprehensive process of identifying what they felt were the needs in the city. And so think about a family who's renting an apartment, right, an apartment unit, compared to a family who owns a home and has a backyard to play in. All those families in that apartment, where do they have to go play after school with the children? Where can they access a safe neighborhood park? Where do they feel included in their city and being taken care of? We have a very disproportionate level of service. And so this approach is to look at it equitably, fairly, least impactful, recognizing that we don't want to impact the small business owner or impact more the person who's just living paycheck by paycheck or on a fixed income or having to be finding a roommate or renting a room or can't even reach a market because they're first-time home buyers. So I also have my issue with housing affordability, but we can go through that later. So here's the thing, the staff went through this line, but the important part of this is that the public needs to prioritize those projects identified by the city. That's the element that we're in today.
Okay, Mike, what are your thoughts on Stronger Vancouver?
Sure. I think right now Stronger Vancouver is the largest issue in front of council. It's been, like Diana said, a 22-month process. It's kind of been shrouded in mystery a little bit. The executive council meetings were open to the public. I was able to attend a few, weren't very accessible, trying to follow that process. I think one of the themes that I'm hearing at the door is that the city and city staff are not listening and not getting feedback from the community. And I think that that's probably a piece that is missing from the Stronger Vancouver process. And I think that's going to be...
How could the council help facilitate that?
I mean, there's a lot of mechanisms for the council to solicit feedback from the city, from residents. I think that that's going to be the missing component over the next few months as the council unpacks all of these issues, unpacks the tax structures, unpacks the good, better, best kind of wish list of what we want to bring our city services up to. So I think that as council goes through that, it's going to be imperative that we have actual feedback from citizens, actual input from different communities across the city, a good cross-section of our residents.
So is it fair to say that you would need to hear that input before you decide?
Oh yeah. I think that is something that council has already said that they need from the city manager, and I am looking forward to participating in that process, but also seeing what that yields. And I think it comes back to a larger community conversation of what we want our city to look like, what we want the stability of the next 10 years of taxes look like for our businesses, for our residents. So it's the biggest hot potato at council right now, and I think that how the executive council or executive sponsors have presented their package, and I think how the current council unpacks that is going to affect us for a long time to come.
Sarah, your thoughts on a Stronger Vancouver?
Well, I think a lot has been said about it already to describe what's in the package. I'd say that one thing I do value is having a committee that was dedicated to this process for 22 months. I reviewed the notes and the agendas online. It was pretty extensive. They did explore a lot of ideas. At this point is when City Council needs to start doing their job, though. You can't just have committees do all of the work of council. The budget is squarely the role of council. The council needs to show the community what they value. They value safety and they value parks, and we value having fully all of our departments fully staffed and responsive to our community. What I'm concerned about with Stronger Vancouver isn't, well, first I'll finish my list of what I like about it. I do like the approach of showing that the revenue source is coming from 3 different areas, spreading it out amongst residents and business owners and direct fees for services. However, I am also very concerned with small businesses. I went online and they do have some interesting tools that I think residents should be interested in as well in utilizing to really explore this, the proposal. Going through that worksheet online, and I also kind of put in a fictional business. Actually, it was very much modeled after my family's business, small business, how many employees they have, what sort of revenue source. And I looked at that small business of 10 employees, and then I put in a 500 employee business making $5 million, so this $1 million business versus this $5 million business, and I looked and saw that proportionally they're basically paying the same. It isn't, so I was concerned about that. I thought to myself, that's another sign that council really needs to do some more work, because those businesses are completely different businesses. How much they have extra in their ability to pay for additional fees and taxes is completely different. A 1 million business versus a $5 million business, a 10 employee business versus a 500 employee business. Those are completely different companies and should be looked at a little differently as we move forward. And I will echo the reaching back out to the community now. They just advertised they just went to council in April with their proposal for Vancouver Strong. They just sent it out. So we do need to then go back to the community and go, okay, this is really what it looks like now, and really help everyone understand what it means, and have them help with prioritizing how we're going to spend the money.
Great, thank you, Adam.
Yes, so Stronger Vancouver is a start. During its process, it has kind of been watered down because of the concerns around some of the tax proposals to where it is now. And I agree with Jeannie that there are revenue projections that are unclear. However, we have been living in a city of 185,000 people. If you annex the entire Vancouver area, we'd be the second largest city in Washington state. So we are living in a city that has largely been underfunded and understaffed in providing services. And the only reason we've been able to get this far is because of the amazing city staff, firefighters, and police officers that have been able to do so much with such limited resources. And so when we're looking at the high rate growth that we're experiencing as a city for the years to come, we need additional revenue. And how we achieve that additional revenue, there are some concerns around the tax proposals, such as the B&O tax, looking at a 2% gross sales, which has concerned a lot of business community leaders that I've spoken to. And they're kind of looking more at maybe some alternatives, like just increasing the head tax a bit more in place of B&O, because that has been a long-standing issue in the business community for many years in Vancouver.
What are your thoughts between those two? Which way would you lean?
Well, Washington State has the most regressive tax system in the nation. And so when we look at regressive taxes that hits everybody, I am concerned about how that disproportionately affects people who have less. So I would like to explore tax options that look at percentage by percentage, who is paying their fair share and who needs to pay a bit more, so that we can all benefit as a city. And from
who determines what's fair?
Well, that is the responsibility of our city government, to be able to work together to be able to do that, from council to the management to our commissions and work groups that are doing this work. And so there does need to be additional work that needs to happen there to make sure that we are all contributing equitably into a stronger Vancouver system that provides essential public services. Because, for example, I am concerned that there are areas of our city where it takes longer than 8 minutes for first responders to be able to meet an emergency. And I don't know about you, but I don't think anybody on this table can hold our breath for 8 minutes to wait for help to arrive. And when we think of our aging baby boomer population in this city, who is going to need and require first responder services into the future, we have to make sure that we have the revenue to be able to provide the public services we need to provide wellness for all of our residents.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
First off, philosophically, I think I like Stronger Vancouver because it's recognizing that we're investing in our community. If you look at the investments that are put forth in Stronger Vancouver, above and beyond the service level increases that we're going to see in terms of staffing and services from the city, there are elements that promote economic development, neighborhood improvements, actually new neighborhoods over at one large project, Block 30 over on the east side of town. You see as a part of this road improvements, park improvements. If you look at the parks that we've got in the city today, they're in really poor shape. And so this is the city saying we need to invest in these community and neighborhood parks so that our kids and families do have places to go and play, as Diana mentioned. When it comes to the funding of a Stronger Vancouver, in talking with some of the folks on the Executive Sponsors Council, the comment was they're working with the tools that they have and really trying to get down to a third, and a third as far as sharing the costs of funding a Stronger Vancouver. As a backstop, we've got to do something to invest in our community. If you look before, and I've seen this in public agency after public agency after public agency, but when we watched the economy tank in 2008, we saw tax revenues decrease because of state initiatives, the Iman initiative. Municipalities and public agencies are capped at 1% growth per year. So if we've seen more than 1% growth, we've seen inflation at typically 2 and 3% over the past decade. And as I believe as Adam or Sarah mentioned, the city has operated a very lean budget, very efficiently, with revenues that have not been able to catch up with expenses. So Stronger Vancouver, it's something we really need to look at as a way to invest in our community. From an economic development perspective, if we're not willing to invest in our community, folks, businesses, industries that would consider locating here will be less likely to invest their dollars in our community. So we need a good, strong fire and police. Safety, public safety is probably paramount, and that should be really a fundamental for every candidate here. But then beyond that, we've got to look at where else are we going to invest. Let's look at investing in our roads, our parks, our schools, our community as a whole. And so from a business versus residential versus small tax perspective, a Stronger Vancouver, really I think what everybody's looking for, if we're in agreement that there's a solid investment to be made, then the next question is it equitable? Is it fair across the board? And I think if you get something that says these are the solid investments we're willing to make in our community, the voters of our community will support that investment so that we can continue to have a Stronger Vancouver.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead,
I'll jump in.
Oh, go right ahead.
I'm curious about the homeless situation and what your assessment is on where the city is with dealing with the homeless issue. Mike, you want to start and we'll run down the line?
Isn't it Diana's turn to go first? I would say that at the door, that's the number one thing people want to talk about is housing and homelessness, affordability, safety. I think that from our point in time counts, we're realizing that our homeless population is increasing as our population is increasing overall, and it is a homegrown problem. It's not folks coming here because it's great to be homeless in Vancouver. I think that with Proposition 1, the city has tried something and have been getting recognized for those efforts. I think that $6 million a year could be evaluated a little bit more, especially as it's been lumped in with Stronger Vancouver to continue indefinitely. I don't think that that's what the voters voted for originally. I think that what the voters voted for was to see people get off the street. And I think if you really take a look at money spent from Stronger Vancouver to citizens, or residents housed, there's some disparity there that we need to reevaluate. I think that there is a gap between the tents on the street and the transitional housing. I think that Clark County has 6 shelters, and I don't believe we've built a new one in 2 decades. I would believe that would be a good place for the city to take some investment in and moving that forward, as well as we are just over 50% all renters in the city. Of those 50%, about 70% of those renters are rent burdened, meaning they're paying more than 30% of their income on housing. So we've got these rent burdened renters that are 1 paycheck, 1 sick day away from sleeping in their car, being homeless, and that there is money to be spent. It is easier to keep people housed than to rehouse them after they're already on the street. So this isn't just a Vancouver problem. It's not a West Coast problem. It's a national problem, and I don't think that anybody has the silver bullet for this issue, but I think that yes, Vancouver has done some things, but there is much more to do for our residents here.
Okay.
The homeless problem is a very complex problem, and we can't talk about it in the depth it needs to in as little time as we have. I think what we need to do, and what Mark Bolt and I were trying to focus on in the county, why are people homeless? And the majority of homeless are homeless for one of three reasons: alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and mental health issues. And in many cases, those are co-dependent issues. So a few people are travelers. I think the majority of the public doesn't feel an obligation to people who just want to keep moving around all the time. So we need a cohesive program, and we need a cohesive review. One of the problems is when you work with the homeless, they have rights not to give you disclosures they don't want to give you. So how long they've been on the street. I really think we need a comprehensive plan. If someone needs help, first of all, they can't live on a tent on the street forever. That is unfair to the other people who live on that street. So the encroachment is sort of galling the public. How can they do that, and why don't we do something about that? There's also the health issues, hypodermic needles, and let's just call it what it is. There's urine and their feces, even though it's against the law to do that in a public place. We see it happening all the time.
Now,
So,
when you say there should be a comprehensive plan, should the city take the lead in that? Is that more of a county issue? Can the city and the county work together?
absolutely, the city and the county must work together on this, because the county has the court system. The county, when the homeless have an engagement with law enforcement, that causes them to be arrested and they go to jail, they get screened, and if it's a health problem or a mental health problem or a drug addiction or alcohol, we have the referral to the court systems that if someone will go in for treatment, their record is purged, we help them get education or trade school or job training. They go through a very serious accountability program.
When you
And-
were on the county council
Yes.
recently, do you think did the county and the city work well together on that, or was there much collaboration?
No, I think there's finger pointing and blaming. And I know that I was shocked when some members of the city council said, why isn't the county doing anything about this? So the county receives the mental health sales tax. And that apportionment of sales tax is used for just these kinds of situations, homeless that suffer from these three primary problems. There is another part of the homeless population that we need to focus on more, and that is those who have an arrest, a felony arrest, and maybe they want to get in the get right room, but you cannot rent an apartment if you're a felon. So even if their family can help them, most landlords won't rent because it makes them a less reliable environment, and people don't want that. So these are the kinds of things we need to be figuring out, and rental assistance isn't necessarily the key, but maybe housing. So there are a lot of components. Instead of being angry and upset with each other, I really think we need to do an adequate inventory to understand what statistically, but not that heartless. Open your heart up, find out why indeed these people are homeless, and start figuring out joint plans to work together for programs. The other thing is there are a lot of nonprofits that ask for portions of the mental health sales tax. We need to start looking for accountability for those contracts to ensure.
I'm sorry, I need to stop you right there, Diana.
It's a big deal.
Lots to unpack.
Well, it is a complex issue.
Yeah.
Dan?
I'd call it a wicked problem. First of all, I would refer to people with no homes, because when we start saying, well, the homeless, then we start dehumanizing and doing us versus them. So the people first language is very important to me, people with no homes. And I think for the issue that we have, it's more than just the three things that Jeanne stated. I had the opportunity to volunteer at the winter shelter. We had the
Overflow
overflow at the Lord's Gym, and let me tell you, I'll just say that it's unacceptable to have a disabled woman in a wheelchair with her service dog and a 10-year-old daughter out on the streets, and they were not drug addicted or recovery addicted or anything. The other thing is a senior citizen who can't afford medical services. The other thing is a young couple with a 7-year-old autistic child. So this is a community. This is part of Vancouver.
Sure, but how do we address it?
So we address it by understanding the people, by looking at people and the needs and so it's a two-prong approach in my platform. One is there needs to be, for the long-term success, there needs to be a full wraparound approach. That's long-term. The second part of this prong approach is that there needs to be the immediate basic needs to stabilize the individual, and that's with the roof and their basic needs.
Do you think that the city's affordable housing levy has been effective? Should it be used differently?
I think that it's gotten us to a better place than it was before. Imagine if we didn't have that levy now. So there's issues obviously between the city and the neighborhoods around the navigation center. So I think that needs to be worked on as far as reestablishing that relationship with the residents and addressing the public safety issues that the residents have brought forth. Is the center going to go away? Probably not. But that community is starting to own that center and be a little more responsible with what's happening on the grounds. So I think that's a huge investment we need to keep nurturing and working on with the residents. The third part of this is a more partnership and relationship building with the county. We do need to have a strategic approach and a plan where we're fully working together
Definitely.
on these two-prong approaches. And we also need to look at how we're spending the money effectively and not just passing the numbers and the bed quotas. It doesn't work that way. I think we have to see the difference. And the reality is that we do have a population, not just in people with no homes, but who of us does not know somebody struggling with mental illness? So I think we need to stop boxing people and labeling them and addressing the policies that are causing this, and part of that is home affordability, prevailing wage jobs, or jobs that offer the appropriate amount to live on, and then having resources and partnerships in place so where we can really think creatively and innovatively outside the box. The legislation just passed the investing in affordable housing, so that should help and bring that in. So we need, thank you.
We'll move on, Sarah.
Great ideas. We keep hearing everyone by the time that gets down the row here. Echoing some of these ideas, but one of them is definitely rephrasing who is homeless out in our community, and it isn't just those with mental illnesses and drug addictions. It is there is a large group of families out there with children, seniors. Those that aren't even visible to our population. They're in their cars, they're in their RVs, they're couch surfing. They've got housing instability as a major concern. And I do think that our Proposition 1 is a start. And it needs needs to be fine-tuned. I think looking at those that are in the industry as our experts, sitting at this table, we are not housing experts. None of us have claimed that today. So working and looking and asking that community of experts to help fine-tune this process. Like I mentioned, attending the workshop on Thursday with our homeless, which in this interview, I'm not going to remember the name of that commission, but going to their information session and hearing just small fine-tuning measures that are flexible spending. I learned, I think it was called flexible spending, where I thought they were going to say that they needed, thousands of dollars to impact someone's life, and they said no, $200 with no strings attached to help someone find a stable place, a roof over their head for the night. Hearing these stories, understanding that some of these are not huge lifts for our community. They might not be large changes to the policy in effect either. As I mentioned, City of Vancouver just won an award from the governor on our affordable housing program because it has a three-prong approach to our crisis. It is less expensive to house people than to be reactionary to our homelessness problem. Just to be honest, a few years ago, I had actually called up the homeless center and I asked them, I said, from a military standpoint, I said, we've got military in our community. We could set up some tents. No one should be without something over their head in our community. Let's just put some tents up. Let's get this going. Let's bring in our National Guard. Luckily, they're a very patient group when they answer phones from citizens like myself, and they explained to me, how expensive that is. They said, not only that, but it's so temporary, right? So you're going to put all these resources for this temporary encampment and then I got, like I said, from that point on, a new lesson and how much it costs for temporary housing versus permanent housing, and this is how we need to move forward in our community to solve our homelessness problem.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. For my whole teaching career, homelessness has had a direct impact on my life. When you see students come into your classroom who do not have a home, and I appreciate the examples given that homelessness can look like a variety of different ways in terms of like couch surfing and just staying at somebody else's place temporarily. There's so many families like that in Vancouver, and I've seen that in my classroom. One period in particular of a class of around 30 kids, I had 5 students who were listed as homeless. And that to me is it's sad, and we have to do something about it. When you think about the environment that we are currently living in, we're already living the most expensive, worst case scenario of what this kind of impact has on our community. And that's why we do need to take bold approaches to rehouse people and provide essential wraparound services tailored to specific populations within our homeless community. And I think there needs to be a prevention response, because so many of our families are on the verge of homelessness that may just be a few $100s that makes or breaks a family. And so I think we need to look at, in addition to housing, which I think ADUs is a great path to move forward on, but looking at food, looking at what are some community-based meals that we can create for all of our families here in Vancouver that can really build a neighborhood cohesion and at the same time save families hundreds of dollars a month in their grocery costs, because they can connect with community meals with their neighborhood community, whether that's at a place of worship, something that the school district has worked on with the city to sponsor, whatever it may be. And then, childcare and transportation. What are some areas there that we can look at to prevent families from falling through financially? And then we do have to approach a housing first policy when it comes to addressing homelessness. Before anybody can do anything else to get themselves back on their feet, they need to have a stable place to sleep. And that can be something where, because resources are so limited, that we do have to start out with the structure perhaps of a tent community that is stable, that provides public safety for all residents in that vicinity. And then they can perhaps transition to a shelter and then to housing, and it creates these steps where it isn't just a one-stop place like the Navigation Center currently is, but that there are different transitory opportunities that get people back on their feet.
Let me jump in along those lines. Assess the affordable housing levy. Has it been effective? Has it been used effectively?
It has generated revenue and resources to be able to start building housing in our community. But the way that the award process is done is, it awards the dollars to different, organizations and groups that have different priorities and visions of how to provide affordable housing. There isn't a complete plan that is accountable to the public. And so I think those resources are important because we do need to be investing more into affordable housing in our city, but we need to have a complete plan, looking at a prevention model and at a housing first model that is tailored to specific parts of our homeless population, so that we can address this in a compassionate, empathetic way. Because you just can't put people in housing when some of them may have mental health or drug abuse issues and then just expect it to work. There has to be those essential wraparound services. And
does that mean you'd set up a bureaucracy to administer this affordable housing program, and how many people would you employ in the city bureaucracy?
I see it more as a partnership between the city utilizing its networks, between nonprofit organizations that already exist, that have self-funding models, philanthropists in our community. We have wonderful, generous families that give so much to our community and are very invested in providing affordable housing, and also connecting our business community together. Because we, as a city alone with tax revenue, we can't solve it by one entity. It requires partnerships of all kinds, because I believe we have the people, we have the talent, we have the resources to actually solve this problem. Because when you consolidate all of those partnerships together, you can create amazing gains that can really make a difference in the lives of so many people. And we already see elements of that throughout the city.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. Well, there's a lot that's been said already, and when I look at the homelessness issue, number one, and it goes without saying, it's a complex issue with a lot of different causes. When I look at the communities that are dealing with homelessness right now, it's not just homelessness, and as Adam hinted at it, when you've got 50 to 60% free and reduced lunches at Evergreen and Vancouver school districts, the kids are coming to school without adequate nourishment. When you look at, I saw a stat last night at a Stronger Vancouver meeting, Fruit Valley Neighborhood Community Park, they're saying 86% of the kids served in that area would be served by that park are free and reduced lunch. So it's not just homelessness, it's actually a broader economic issue that we're dealing with here. So if you look at it, we're dealing with lower incomes. You're looking at working poor, who, and everybody's talked about working poor, that you're working somewhere for, $10, $15 an hour, and you're working full-time, both parents working full-time, and rents have gone from $500 a month to $1,300 a month over the past 10 years. It really is, it's an affordability issue. So the question becomes, how do we solve it? And beyond affordability, there's also issues of, and I don't want to say, part of the challenge is, how do we segment the group? So how much is mental health issues? How much are drug abuse issues? And how much are people that are just unable to afford to have a roof over their heads? And it's youth who are couch surfing, families who miss that rent payment. So how do we deal with it? I would say we need to get creative in looking at how we build up our housing stock. whether it's tents or ADUs or something that's more permanent that gives people an option to get a roof over their head that's affordable. Then how do we continue to work to build income levels here in our community? And that's back to how do we bring jobs to the community that are going to help people be able to afford raising rents or being able to afford to get a house or a roof over their head that they actually have some ownership in. I'm not an expert on homelessness. I'm learning about this issue. What I've seen from the city is that they're moving in the right direction.
And how would you assess the affordable housing level?
I'm still learning about it, but what I'm hearing is they're making steps in the right direction. I think they need to continue to go out to the community, to listen to members in the neighborhoods where they're siting facilities, to work with community partners. If you look at the work that Cher is doing, Open House Ministry, other nonprofits that are doing really good work. So how do we pull them all together? And I don't have an evaluation on how they're doing, but I know they're moving in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. A couple of questions specific to a particular person. I'll start with that. Sarah, I'm curious, you're the president of the Camas Public Employees Association. How would you assess the city's relationship with public employees?
I'm actually not the president any longer.
Oh, I apologize.
Right. So
On your website.
I was the president for 6 years.
Okay.
Yes. And so the question is, how would I assess our relationship with our public employees in Vancouver? I've talked to a lot of the groups, fire, police, ops, all these different groups individually, because it is each group has their own perspective on relationships with city and the city's handling of their wages, hours, working conditions, and bringing my experience forward, I'd say that I hear some of the similar concerns, even, like I said, even though they're different departments, and there is a disconnect, it seems, between what the staff feels is necessary for their groups to be well trained, serve the community well. There seems to be that disconnect between what staff feels and perhaps what their managers are saying to city council. Not saying there's this huge issue that we need to correct today, but understanding that each group has a side and a story to tell, and being that city council person that knows that we should be listening to both groups, not just the directors and the managers. We should be sitting down with staff. We should be visiting their workplaces and seeing how things are operating is really important. And then also understanding that to attract employees to a workplace, you need to ensure that we're paying them competitive wages. And that's not just the wages, it's the benefits, it's their hours, it's their health care, it's their vacation packages, to really make sure that we're a competitive city, so we attract more officers that want to be hired into our police force. We have 17 positions, 17 positions that need to be hired in the next few years. Same with our firefighters. And as we've mentioned, we have a backlog right now in staffing from the recession when we laid off so many employees. So understanding that there's a balance there, but we can't just listen to one side as we're trying to solve our wages, hours, and working conditions of the city of Vancouver.
I'm curious, Paul, you mentioned attracting businesses,
Yes.
jobs here. How would you assess the city's fee waiver program? Is that effective? Would you want to change that?
Well, with the fee waiver program, the question would be, are we working at building more space locally, or are we actually attracting other employers here? Because, I look at it, and we're seeing some great development around the waterfront. And it's nice to see it, but the question will be is, are we going to be able to attract employers who are going to want to move here? So for me, the question would be, are we actually bringing in the jobs, or are we just creating temporary jobs by building whatever it is that we may be building? So for me, that's what I'm going to look at, is what's going to create the best long-term economic impact for our community.
Thank you. Jeannie, I'm curious, at the top of your campaign website, you declare it's time for a new kind of leadership. How long have you been in city or county council?
12 years on Vancouver City Council, 4 years on Clark County Council.
So do you qualify as a new kind of leadership?
No, what I'm saying is that in this Vancouver City Council seat, I think it is not holistic enough. And I think that some of the impending decisions have not given careful consideration to unintended consequences. For example, if we do a blanket increase of property tax, that'll be 5% or more over the next 5 years, probably more than that. How does that affect people that are marginally staying in their apartments and their homes now? So there aren't easy problems or easy answers. You need to really carefully think about how it all comes about. And that is, I call that a more leadership perspective. So you need to know both the detail and the nuts and bolts. But I think the council has the council has gone to looking primarily at downtown redevelopment. And there are people in other parts of the cities that are saying, we don't get any talk about our needs out here. The work the city did, I'm not criticizing it. It was good work. It needed to be done. It's fruitful, it's positive, and it's kick-started.
So along those lines, I'm curious, would you be in favor of choosing the council by district?
No.
Okay, Mike, what are your thoughts on that? Would you be in favor
About
of district?
districting?
Yeah.
I am in favor of districting as we continue to grow and annex. We're going to be a city that's going to need that kind of representation, whether it's geographically or income-based or any X, Y, and Z issue of diversity. I think if you look at the current council, Councillor Turley is the only one west of 205. I think that is probably
East of 205.
or excuse me, east of 205. So I think that is one of the major issues that the Charter Review Commission has taken into account, is that geographic diversity. And I think as we continue to grow to the second largest city in Washington over the next 30 years as we annex, that's going to become more and more of an issue.
Diana, would you be in favor of district building?
Yes, I am. And I think that I would be a product of that. I live on the Far East Side. I also think that as we grow, that there's a possibility of maybe doing mixed districting, just to make sure that we're doing at large also. There's pros and cons to each one. And I don't believe...
And I know some cities.
Yes. Yes, so in the long term, that's definitely something that we could do, but in the being the only city not districted in the state of Washington, with already 185,000 and growing, and people wanting to be know who their leaders are and have that representation, and so those opportunities need to be made to all our residents.
Sarah, would you be in favor of district?
Yes, definitely. I believe that it's really hard as a candidate that is from maybe not the wealthiest of citizen, families and whatnot, to really get started in politics when you're trying to traverse the entire city. We should be able to have a representative that's from a smaller section of our city, and like Diana said, those citizens need to know who you are, see you in the grocery store, have drinks with you at the coffee shop, and that's what districting would also allow, is for that group to really champion someone from their area.
Adam?
Yeah, I actually was at the city council meeting last night, and I gave public comment in support of the recommendations that the Charter Review Commission put before the council when it came to priority one, which is in relation to districting. There were many members of the commission last night that spoke out and were disappointed that the council did not want to move forward with that on the November ballot. And for me, I believe in the democratic process. I think there are good arguments on both sides to the issue, but it must be decided by the Vancouver voter. The voters need to weigh in at the kitchen table, at the coffee house, at the neighborhood association meeting, if they do want to go to districting as a city. And they need that opportunity on the November ballot. So I'm hopeful that at the August 5th workshop, that the council will reconsider their position and put that on the ballot so that the people of Vancouver can decide.
Paul?
Short answer is yes, I'm in favor of districting. Philosophically, it puts us closer, it puts the elected folks who are running for office closer to the people they are representing. And I agree, I've listened to Sarah talk about it. And it's it's a way to get you closer to the people that you're talking with, serving with, and representing. So yes.
So I said no. I didn't realize I had time to explain what no means.
Okay, what?
So what I've seen districting do at the county is not altogether favorable, and that is territoriality. So to represent the citizens, and what needs to be guarded against, and I think you are right about a modified system, at some point you need, and in this case 7 people, to come together to agreement on a common good for the city as a whole. And if you start to get divisions by district, people care more about will the people of their district re-elect them than they do about how the whole city comes together cohesively as a whole for the best good for everybody. So that it can be done, but I would put that caution out there.
Do you consider yourself a victim of districting?
Are you kidding me? Absolutely. I was converted from a mixed district, a District 3, and the charter put me into a district that was 72% politically unfavorable to me.
Right, exactly.
So that wasn't my doing, that was the charter. It passed at the same time I got elected. So yes, that happens, but that is not the issue I'm talking about.
I understand that. I just was curious.
It's a very, very important issue, not to set it up in a way that nobody stakes out a territory and they serve only that territory because those are the only people.
Well, I believe isn't the proposal to choose the candidates by district, but then it would be an at-large election.
Yes.
Yes.
So for the
It's a
primary,
modified.
Primary would be.
Right.
Yeah.
primary by district, general at large,
Mayor at large.
Right.
and mayor at large.
Right, anything else? Great. We'll move on then. Give us your final pitch, take 1 minute, and please keep it short. Tell us why voters should support you, and please mention any notable endorsements. And we'll start at this end.
My name is Paul Montague. I consider myself to be very experienced in economic development and will bring that skill to City Council. I believe we should focus on economic development, transportation, infrastructure, and preserving our quality of life here in Vancouver. We've got a great community. I think we've got an excellent prospects for a great future. And I am candidate for City Council. It's paulforvancouver.com. It's my website if you want to go and learn more.
And I'm sorry, endorsements?
I was actually the last candidate in this race, and so I've got a number of friends who have endorsed me, and what I will say is most of the folks who would have endorsed me had already committed to other candidates because I came here, I was the last minute candidate, so.
All right, well, thank you. Hey, Adam?
Yes. So as a teacher and a small business owner, I know how hard our Vancouver families work to make ends meet in this community. And I see the need that is there. And that is why I want to be a voice and an advocate for them on the council. I believe that I bring the strength of listening and empathy to hear all perspectives and sides for this nonpartisan seat. And that is why I have a well-rounded set of endorsements of different levels of government within our community. I've been endorsed by Temple Lentz, our Clark County councilor, Don Orange, our Vancouver Port Commissioner, and Winnie Smith, our Vancouver School District Director. And so, it's important that we look at our community's future as it being local, that the future is local, and that we can solve challenging situations together by consolidating and maximizing our resources here locally. And that's why I'm excited to run for Vancouver City Council and to continue to get out there on the doors and talk with our community.
All right, thank you, sir.
Well, I would say that what I'd be bringing to City Council is the fact that I have both private and public sector experience. I was also served in the military. I'd be the only veteran on council. I think our council needs a person with a wide range of experiences, and also that's been very dedicated to this community with my volunteer work and my work on commissions. And also, as far as moving forward with the city, we do have a very we have a wealth of riches in this community when it comes to our natural resources, the amount of small businesses that thrive here, and also just the amount of wealth of ideas that we keep bringing to the table as to how to continue to grow together as a community. And I see that, and I understand that we need to continue to engage with our citizens in the greatest way possible. I'm endorsed by Representative Monica Stonier and other local business leaders. I have a list of endorsements on my website. You can find me at foxforcitycouncil.com. And you can also send an email to me and ask more questions if they come up. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Diana?
I am running because I want to create a bigger table for all our voices in the community. And I'm running because I want people to see themselves reflected in the conversations that City Council is having. I have over 25 years of public land management experience. I've worked as a wildland firefighter, a biologist, a program manager, a deputy monument manager, an acting district ranger, a public affairs officer, and now program specialist. I'm a community advocate. I work with state, federal, local, private, nonprofit, tribal, and I will continue to do so. I have a skill of collaboration and bringing people together, and I also bring an equity filter. I bring a unique voice to City Council. I bring my strategic thinking, planning, and implementation. When people want things done, they call me. Some people run to be somebody, others run to get things done, and I'm that person who's going to get things done on City Council. I've been endorsed by the National Women's Political Caucus, the Sierra Club, City Councilor Lori Lebowski, Evergreen School District Board Chair Victoria Bradford, Alicia Topper, Clark County Treasurer, business leaders, Port of Vancouver Commissioner Eric LeBrant, Senator Claire Wilson, former Mayor Nan Henriksen, former Mayor Tim Levitt, and former Councilor Jack Berkman. So I have a list of other great endorsers in the community. They believe in me. They know I get things done. I can work with a wider range of people, and I'm going to be the champion for the people of Vancouver.
All right, thank you. Jeanne?
I'm running for a very simple reason. I have knowledge and experience extensively over the years in being an elected official and understanding what all the issues are, what the problems are, what solutions have worked in the past, how to facilitate that, being holistic in looking at the big picture of what problems are, and being able to understand how you can work with that and the detail. I believe in what it says in the Washington State Constitution. All political power is vested in the people. So to be an implement to do that, it takes knowledge, it takes expertise, it takes integrity. How do you do that? When the people talk to you, how do you take that collective information, carefully consider it, and get an outcome that keeps the people realizing they're at the helm? What they need, what they want is important. So you don't just listen to it and blow it off. You have to listen to that and figure out how to do it in a way that's good in the bigger picture.
Thank you. Any endorsements?
I have not sought endorsements.
And Mike?
Sure. I almost would prefer to have gone the other way this time. A lot of great things have been said. I have great respect for everyone at this table, but I would not be in this race if I didn't believe that I was the best to fill this seat on City Council. What makes me different is that I am the youngest in the race. I am an East Sider, a renter. I have been one of those free and reduced school lunch kids. I am a product of this community. I was born and raised here. But not only that, what you're getting with Mike Pond is someone who's going to be ready on day one, whatever committee assignment it would be, whether it's CTRAN, RTC, any community meetings. I have been in those rooms when those tough discussions have been happening, when those tough decisions have been made. I've done the homework and I've done the research, and I'm ready to take on this mantle. I have a plethora of issues. I've got a lot of things that I care about, but I think if you look at my history in this community, I'm no Johnny-come-lately, and I have the relationships to be successful in this seat. And again, see, endorsements, what's coming to the top of my mind is former Representative Jim Moeller, former state representative and county commissioner Betty Sue Morris, many other community members and leaders. But I would challenge you, what is interesting, being one of 7 people up here and different people jumping in the race at different times, check out the PDC. Look who has supported me and given me money to this race. I know I'm neck and neck with fundraising the most for this seat. I know that has a lot to do with how city council races are won and lost. So I know exactly how to run a campaign, where to be, who to do these things with, who the players are in the room, and I'm ready to take on this seat. So again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and check out my website, Vote Pond.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.